Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you, and thank you for being here. Thank you also to those who are watching us live or otherwise on video. I'm Farah Nayeri. I'm a culture correspondent for the New York Times, and I have done many a panel, moderated many a panel in my life, including right here at the Athens Democracy Forum. But I think it's safe to say that never in all my years have I had speakers of the sheer caliber of the ones that I'm accompanied by this evening on stage, for we are here in the presence of two of the greatest philosophers and thinkers of all time. To my right is the great Greek philosopher Aristotle, who many considered to be the greatest Greek philosopher of all. We are gathered here in Athens, a city where I believe he spent the better part of his life. And to my left is none other than Confucius. The greatest Eastern philosopher of all, whose beliefs and principles are taught and respected all over the world, including, of course, in the People's Republic of China. Of course, it is a little odd for a woman to be moderating this particular session. Why? Because Aristotle and Confucius are maybe not as caught up with women's rights as we would like, and maybe not the greatest defenders of gender equality. I'm very sorry to put you both on the spot here. You are not alone. Millions and millions and millions of men in the world today, as we all know, share your views, including in my homeland, Iran. I am, as you can see, an outspoken Iranian woman, of which there are many. Aristotle's view, thank you. Aristotle's view, sorry to look at you as I say this, is that women should be excluded from politics and public life. I did check this in many historical sources. It really isn't a gratuitous statement. Because they are capable, according to Aristotle, of only limited doses of practical rationality, and have a tendency to let their emotions take over. So I'm going to try and control my emotions this evening and be as rational as I can. To Aristotle, even though women do have the status of citizens, which is, of course, the very high status in the view of Aristotle, they require permanent rule by their male superiors in public and within the family unit. As for Confucius, his belief is that women's role is to take care of household management, be a wife and a mother. There are very few women who have the talent and the virtue to be able to transcend that role and step outside of the domestic realm. Again, Aristotle and Confucius are by no means alone in holding these views. As I was mentioning earlier, there are in 2024, we're almost in 2025, millions and millions and millions of men who are of the same belief. So I'm going to jump off my feminist soapbox and move on to more pressing topics of discussion with the two great thinkers we have here with us this evening, and what a privilege it really is. So allow me first to turn to you, Aristotle. You are also known as Professor Jeffrey Sachs, director.
A pseudonym.
A pseudonym. Director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. Aristotle, you preach virtue, rationality, choosing for the common good, moderation, civic participation. What do you think of the state of the world today? And more specifically, what is your view on the way in which the United States of America, the great superpower, is conducting itself?
Well, thank you very much. First, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me back to Athens. I left 2,347 years ago. I had to flee that year. You'll recall that my student Alexander died suddenly in Babylon. I was a Macedonian in Athens. It was not entirely safe, so I left. I moved to the Upper West Side of New York. I've been teaching at Columbia for a little over 2,000 years, or so it seems. But it's very nice to be back in Athens, and I love the neighborhood. If you stroll outside, it's just a few blocks to my school, the Lyceum. And I do encourage you to take a walk. Remember, when we lectured, we walked. We are the peripatetic philosophers, and I'd be happy to walk with any of you in the Lyceum and teach you a thing or two. Now, I wrote, as you know, around 200 books. Many of them you'll only find in a few libraries now, still unexcavated. But a few of them I really do want to draw to your attention, three in particular to address your question. I wrote De Anima, on the soul, to help us understand human nature. And that book it was a bestseller in 330 BC. It made the New York Times bestseller list. And it's been on the core curriculum pretty much for the last 2,300 years. It's about human nature. Second, I wrote probably the first self-help book in Western culture, which I gave to my son Nicomachus, it came to be known as the Nicomachean Ethics. It was really to help my son grow up, frankly. I told him, behave yourself, moderation in all things, be a good person. We use the word arete, virtue, but just behave and don't get carried away like an animal. You know, think like a human being. This is the most important point. When I finished that book, the core that I had established about human nature, among other things, was that people are zoon politikon, as you know. We are social animals. We are political animals. We live in communities. And you probably know a few weirdos who don't. I said in the Nicomachean Ethics that anyone who would live alone must be either a god or a beast. Some of them are now running for president or other positions, but in general, we are social animals and we need to learn to live together. So when I finished the Nicomachean Ethics, I gave a course the next semester on politics. In other words, how to be virtuous as citizens. And the politics is conjoined with the Nicomachean Ethics. One is a kind of self-help for people, and the other is a self-help for political systems. And to do that, I did some good empirical research. I got my grad students, they needed term papers, so I got them to collect all the constitutions of the polises of Greece. They collected around 400 constitutions. We analyzed them and then asked the question, which of these produces eudaimonia? Which of them delivers happiness? And what we understood was virtue is key to that. How people really behave is key. And one of the most interesting things is that the discussion here of this forum, which focuses on a structural issue, democracy, is maybe not really the main point. Because you can look at the form of government, and I noted three main forms: government of the one, government of the few, and government of the many. But I noted in the politics, which I hope you've read several times, there are good forms and there are bad forms.
Well, precisely.
So
I want to ask you.
Just to finish on that, look, in the United States, we have what I showed was a terrible form of democracy right now.
Why is that?
And the reason is that democracy first has to be based on virtue, but we have crooks as presidents, we have liars as presidents. There's no sense of virtue, none at all. In fact, really, it's a democracy only on the surface right now, because the hidden state and the plutocratic state really drive so much of American politics. It's somewhere between how much you take for your political campaign, which will be about $10 billion this year. Everyone's on the take, by the way. And the billionaires, which in my society, we didn't have billionaires. We had thousandaires and millionaires in drachmas. Now we have billionaires in dollars. Pretty impressive. They buy all of the politics. I warned about this. I said you need a strong middle class if you're going to sustain really a kind of polis that works, that delivers for the common good, which ours does not. Second point that I want to emphasize, and then I'll turn it over to Confucius, because I haven't seen you in 2,300 years.
That's a long time.
And you're 200 years older than I am, and you're looking great.
Thank you.
So, and welcome to my hometown. But I'd like to say that there was a big mistake, a really strange concept called the democratic peace. I don't know who came up with this weird idea, but it was thousands of years after I had lived in a democratic setting. There was no peace in Athens. This was the most warmongering, imperialistic state. You know, and we had demagogues, go for war, go invade Syracuse. How stupid was that? We lost the Peloponnesian Wars over this idiot that told us to go invade Syracuse. That's democracy. You get a demagogue, you go to war.
Okay.
So we've got demagogues galore. We're nonstop war right now. Even as we speak, we're at war in Lebanon. By the way, that's a U.S. war. We provide all the bombs, all the money, all the intelligence. And be careful, because maybe tomorrow the war will be in Iran also, because that's the real idea of these creeps in our government. And so it's a very dangerous time. But over to you, Confucius.
Certainly wouldn't want war anywhere, really. I'm a pacifist, but I wouldn't want it in my homeland or any land.
But that's what they're after right now. They're trying to provoke a war, another war. But that's what Cleon did.
Who knows?
This goes back to Athens, my God.
We need to turn to your colleague. I would very much like now to address Confucius, who is also known as Dr. Henry Wang, founder and president of the Center for China and Globalization in Beijing. Confucius, can we keep conversation down, please? We are in the presence of great philosophers. One of your most famous precepts is, do not impose unto others what you would not wish to be imposed on you. This is a moral tenet which, as you've told me, encourages individuals to practice empathy, respect in their interactions with others, and to promote peaceful coexistence and mutual understanding. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence of that in the world today, as Aristotle was pointing out to us just moments ago. So, Confucius, when you look out on the world with all of your wisdom, what do you see?
Great. Thank you, Farah, and great for the Athens Democracy Forum. I'm not as wise as Jeff.
Aristotle.
Well, Aristotle. Okay. But I think, even though Confucius is about 200 years old and Aristotle, but I think I can act in today's world, but just to reflect a great philosophy of ancient time. Actually, Confucius, lived 500 years BC, but he has 3,000 students, and he has really accumulated a lot of teachings and wisdom of I think that Chinese Asian people has. And what I think he values most is for example, the benevolence. That really you have to really love the people, love the be a really a good governor or good ruler. You have to fundamentally you have to love the people. I think that's the teaching he has throughout the history. So even today, it's a backbone philosophy of Chinese governance style. And the other thing, of course, is his strike a balance. He's really looking for a doctrine of the mean, because he really wants to pursue a neutral way of life and not to go to the extreme. So I think that's another thing. And of course, the other thing he was really talk a lot is the, that you have to not, as you mentioned, that do not do to the others if you do not desire others to do to you. And that's absolutely reflect what, the human being's nature, that we have to, consider this as the motto of the world, actually, for really practicing whether it's a person-to-person relation, or it's government relations and people's relations. Absolutely, that's very wisdom of Confucius. So I think that Confucius really has a huge impact on China.
Well, how does he have an impact on China? Because I don't think the doctrine of the mean is something that one can observe in China, whether internally or externally today. It is not a doctrine of moderation. It is not a doctrine of the middle path. It is a government, a system that can be considered not to be a democracy.
Yeah.
And so I wondered what,
okay. Well, I think, actually we're here at Athens, where's the origin of the Western democracy. But I think, democracy needs to be upgraded, innovated, and also enhanced. And I think, China has actually, the Confucius value and the Confucius philosophy has a huge impact on China. And that's, I think they have produced a very unique system of China, where I think there is a combination of Confucianism and also the meritocracy. And also it's kind of form of a democracy as well. For example, today, China, that you have every year 50 million students go to the exams. So they are really elected 12 million to the college. That's a kind of election and by examination papers. And then you have 2 to 3 million college students go for government jobs. And then you have about 200,000 being elected or selected by the examination papers. So it's really it's meritocracy that's practiced for thousands of years. It's really a Confucius legacy, actually. So you see that really governing China, and also for the government officials. The government officials, there's many of them in China, but then you can't start from bottom to top. You have to really gradually work your way through by performance. For example, there's 2,800 counties in China, and then there's 260 cities in China above population 1 million, and then there's 34 provinces and municipalities of greater provincial status. And then you have to really work your way from the village to township to county to the municipality to the government. And then it's not how good you make a speech in the public square, then you become the president. You really have to really work your way through.
You have to prove yourself.
You see there's a meritocracy, there's a selection, there's a Chinese also consultative democracy, which is I think more Confucius value applied there. Okay. You have to really dialogue, consultation, and work your way through. So I think they have a unique model. That's why how can you justify China is doing, lift 800 million people out of poverty, or become the second largest economy in a decade's time. Now they're leading the world by green power transition. So I think there must have done something right. And also China has 5,000 years history. It's the only civilization that not interrupted or stopped. Its continuity is still there. So there's many merits of China. So I think there's a reason for Confucius to be reflected today. Yeah.
Sorry, but I think the Persian civilization is also continuous, but never mind.
Of course. Yes,
sorry.
Yes.
Aristotle. We just heard from Confucius, but I did want to ask you a question, because when I've been listening to your pronouncements, I have to say, on TV and on YouTube.
Not on the New York Times pages. I can't get them in anymore.
Okay, we'll put in a good word.
Well, if you would, because I was you know, free speech, I don't know what happened, but I can't even get 700 words in the last 3 years.
Okay, well, I am writing a story about the conference, so I'll put you in that.
Oh,
sure.
good.
Aristotle, I will be quoting you as Aristotle, too.
Yes.
No, I wanted to ask you, listening to you, I hear a lot of criticism, really, really harsh criticism of your homeland,
Yes.
the United States of America. And I don't know whether it's for the sake of argument, but you also are very almost defending or explaining the policies of America's adversaries, such as China, such as Russia. Why do you do that?
Well, first of all, it's the responsibility of a philosopher to critique one's own society. My colleague Confucius spent almost all his life wandering from kingdom to kingdom, trying to get some ruler to listen to him. Finally, at age 70, and I'm familiar with that too, you sit down and you teach your students, and then they write your analects based on your teachings. But it's very hard to get rulers to listen. But I do believe that it's extremely important to critique one's own society first, because we have a very hard time understanding ourselves. And you remember what we all know from the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. What is the first words on the wall? Know thyself. This is the key. We don't know our own society. I was just reading, I was reading the New Yorker. Excuse me. It's undigestible propaganda, if you know. And so are your pages very often, because you're telling people what they want to hear, not what's true. And this is a job of a philosopher to say this. I sometimes often, also in another context, there was another great sage. He's a kid, Jesus. He was born around he was about 380 years after I was, and he used to say, why do you point to the mote in the other person's eye when you have the beam in your own eye? You know, it's very clever. I think Jesus' foreign policy is exactly right. Take the beam out of our own eye, understand what we're doing, and then we can make peace with the other. Because this is the whole idea, that you have a relationship. I think Confucius made brilliant points about the decency of relationship. Book 8 of my Nicomachean Ethics was telling Nicomachus, make friends, learn how to be friendly with other people. You have to listen to them. We're not good at that right now. That's why I do it. But I also know something went haywire in the United States in 1947. We created the CIA. We have a deep state. We really do. If you have done 44 years of work like I have, again, that's only part of my 2,300-year career. But still, that more recent period, I see the United States lying all the time. By the way, one day there was a coup in Haiti. The president had said to me, they're going to take me out. The president, because he asked me to be his economic advisor. This was Aristide. The CIA walked in, put him on an airplane, flew him 23 hours to the Central African Republic in a coup. I called the New York Times reporter on the beat. Aren't you going to cover this? She said to me, well, my editor's not very interested. In a coup in broad daylight. This is literally the truth. I'm sorry to pick on one paper. It just is the one that comes to mind today.
Yeah, and we only have 5 more minutes, yes. Unfortunately.
So I also think it's important. You asked Confucius, well, it's not a democracy. But again, read my book. Read the politics. Democracy can be mob rule. It can be plutocracy. It's a form. I want a mixed form of government. I want the meritocracy. And, you know, the donors pay money, and then they become our representatives all over the world because they put in some money.
Okay.
But here you get an exam. You're the best in the exam. My experience is the Chinese senior officials are so much better trained than the American senior officials.
Well, that's
it's a huge
that's a
difference.
compliment to you, isn't it, Henry?
Well, I think the,
Henry, I would
yeah.
basically like you, as Jeffrey did,
Yeah.
excuse me, Aristotle did.
Sure.
You, Confucius, it would be great if you could critique, as he did, the system that he emanates from. Can you critique your system?
Well, absolutely. We live in the world of democracy, because that's why I think this forum is a democracy forum. And one of the things I think now is that, for example, China is critiqued by countries around the world all the time. We are living a world of nations, of 200-some nations. And the biggest opposition party is the United States. And of course, probably EU too. So China is constantly being criticized. And then you have also, I think, that's why democracy needs to be innovated and upgraded. For example, in China, you have this big digital democracy. There's 1 billion smartphone users, where to go, what to buy, what to prefer. They are voting by their mobile phone on a daily basis. That's a big, also a democracy. And also there's a big data. So people is not foolish anymore. They can really use the big data to really accurately cure a patient or to cure the government official if they make a big mistake. And then, so I think the old notion that there's only a public square that can only debates, and then after debate you pick a leader, that kind of style probably needs to be innovated. Because I think in China, you really have to raise all the ranks, from the county to the municipality, to the province, to the central government, and then by performance. So if you regard the 2008 counties in China, so all the mayors are competing with each other. So this is a form of a new democracy, I would say, or meritocracy in democracy form. And that works. So if people are not familiar with that, that's really, I think it's great that we go back to the roots of Confucius. That's where it all comes from. Meritocracy has been practiced in China for thousands of years. The Mandarin system was invented thousands of years ago. So it's not really something new. China, what it's doing is really 5,000 years civilization continuously, and then that has really married with technology, married with the globalization, married with the market system. They create a miracle. So I think we probably need a new look at what China is doing, and really forget about those old tradition, democracy versus autocracy, that kind of a narrative. We need a new narrative. I think the world is really...
Well, I think we have a new narrative tonight, because I mean, here we have United States being portrayed as a plutocracy full of crooks and liars, and here we have People's Republic of China defined as a meritocracy where you rise on your merit. So I think that we do need to think in different ways, in fresh ways, and and I do also appreciate that unfortunately there is this thing called time, which you are both very, very familiar with.
Could we meet in another 1,000 years?
I would definitely like that. If I'm still there, it would be a great pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to thank Aristotle and Confucius for a fantastic talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.